myself, because there's a bigger topic here for us to cover. But just a little bit of a context. I am a Brazilian national. I've been practicing martial arts now for 26 years. I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, third degree, a rank of professor. I've been an amateur competitor in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, and I've trained Muay Thai and Judo for 10, 12 years, more or less. So, I like to think of myself as a martial artist first, and a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor second. And wanted to give just a little bit of a flavor of what martial arts comes from, and how do we how do we arrive at the modern martial arts systems, and a little bit more about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So if you go the history of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a quite curious one, because it is a very modern martial arts. It's a self-defense system that was basically let's say adapted by two Brazilian brothers, two Brazilian immigrants in a way. There were Scottish parents that settled in the northeast part of Brazil, very poor area in Brazil, and a Japanese judoka came to the country to spread judo. This is in the 20s. With the two brothers sort of looking at what the martial art judo was and ways to improve it, they basically started a new system called at the time Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. And the way that they made it popular in Brazil and then in the entire world was that they would basically challenge people one-on-one combats with no rules. Basically, you could do any type strikes or chokes or locks would be allowed in this combat, and they would basically utilize this system that they developed years that were self-defense centric, meaning movements be very effective in a hand-to-hand combat. This system became very, very popular, and then spread all over Brazil. And in the 80s, this son of one of the brothers decided to move to the United States and started doing the same type of challenges. So they would do a challenge where if you beat him or one of the brothers, they would pay you $100,000. Can imagine a lot of people showed up at the gym to take on the challenge. And to their credit, they tried, but because Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was developed to be a system that on a one-to-one combat scenario was basically developed to be active in all kinds of situations, with strikes, with ground fight. A lot of the martial arts that were very specializing in one type of system, such as boxing, which you can only punch. As you know, in a boxing match, not kick, you're not allowed to take the person down. You can only use your hands. You can use your elbow, use your head. So because all the other elements, they were, it was quite effective. And that with the internet being developed and being, a way of people watching videos on all the platforms that you can imagine, including YouTube, this particular martial arts became quite effective, popular, and now is the fastest growing, martial arts, in the world, and also because of a new modern mixed martial arts competition, which are competitions that allow you to do all types of strikes and incorporate all types of systems. What is interesting about the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is that it is a modern martial art that is developed with a self-defense focus, that it is meant to make a smaller person using leverage to be able to defend them against a bigger attacker. And this is really why the brothers, Helio and Carlos Gracie, decided to adapt this system. Their philosophy is that if you find yourself in an assault situation or a self-defense scenario, if you don't lose, if you don't get harmed, you won, right? That's the philosophy of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You have to be able, as a small person, regardless of your gender, you should be able, after learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and practicing very often, you should be able to at least defend yourself from a bigger, larger attacker. And the way that, to explain this in a better way is that because of the mechanism and how the body works, if you try to throw a stone, for instance, standing, a bigger person, a heavier person, a strong person will be able to throw that stone much, much further away than a smaller person. Now imagine if, this person is doing that from the ground. If you're trying to throw a stone, if you are basically with your back on the floor, the difference between strength of a smaller person and a bigger person becomes, a lot smaller, if you will. So the idea of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is not a striking-based martial arts. It's a martial arts that requires the situation to be taken to the ground. The picture that you see there on the presentation, that somebody is on the process of taking a person to the ground in a situation of you being attacked, somebody trying to, for instance, punch you. And the entire system now is developed into this leverage of trying to minimize the power difference between a bigger person and a smaller person. In the context of martial arts, in the larger context of martial arts and hand-to-hand combat, I just wanted to touch on a few things that I find interesting, that I learned during the years. Hand-to-hand combat has been part of humankind. The first time recorded is before BC, before Christ. So basically, there are records of hand-to-hand combat in cave paintings in Spain, where they depict, people fighting. It's as far as you have records of human interaction, you will have, records of violence between humans, unfortunately. And it is a sort of a primal that we have, that everyone has, and sometimes it comes out in the most unusual or unexpected situations. I don't know if you had the displeasure to see politicians sometimes, resorting to fighting, hand-to-hand combat in Congress or in sessions, official sessions. You can see people resorting to hand-to-hand combat in road rage situations. Very often, people, resorting to violence when they're after consuming alcohol, which is, very common. You can see people fighting in bars. And a lot of times you see, very, very young children, due to frustration and not being able to communicate, they resort to some type of, physical, a physical way to express their frustration, which, it comes in biting, pulling hair, and sometimes punching and scratching. So it is undeniably a part of our nature. And obviously with people being more educated, more conscious about, how to behave, we don't expect people to resolve conflict by fighting. But unfortunately, in many circumstances still today, it's very common for people to suffer some type of assault. And it's particularly more, predominant in the case of, male on female assault, which is something that, it's something that is very serious. And martial arts has been now for many, women to defend themselves, learn how to defend themselves in these situations. The term martial arts comes from the art of Mars, which Mars was the Roman god of war, and from very, very early days on to the traditional Chinese martial arts, Indian traditional martial arts, African traditional martial arts, to Japanese martial arts. to now Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Capoeira as the two, Brazilian types of systems of martial arts. There are numerous martial arts systems around the world. It's hard to find a culture that doesn't have a type of recorded martial arts system with divided in two distinct pillars. One, the grappling based martial arts, which is a combat where is a close combat situation where grappling, takedowns, and wrestling, if you will. Then you have the striking based martial arts, which are the most famous one is boxing, but you have Muay Thai, you have Savat, you have a number of other types of martial arts. What benefits of martial arts in society today? This is despite the fact that a lot of people do train martial arts for self situation. This is hopefully and will continue to be a situation will be less and less likely to be used. The more let's say enlightened we become as a species, the less we should be using force to but there are other elements of martial arts that can be very beneficial for people. One obviously is spirit, mental well-being. I find it in my case practicing martial arts a very important part of my mental health, from not only from a physical point of view but from a mental point of view. I am not the same person when I'm not able to train, and I can see that with my students as well, when with people that have started training. There is something to be said about having the focus and the discipline and the routine of practicing martial arts, whatever martial arts it is. Second is the physical. Training martial arts on a consistent basis makes you a much healthier individual. For control, for your cardiovascular system, the benefits are many. And the third one is, I would say, is a psychological effect, which I think is probably one that I find sometimes not very much discussed. I mean, people who train martial arts, they're less likely to be violent, believe it or not. And this comes from inherited, confidence that you get if you train martial arts consistently. It's very good for children and young adults because it does build self-esteem. It does create a situation of belonging to a group, and that has shown for many years in all different cultures that is highly beneficial for children and then also there is also the benefit of having an activity that can basically have benefits in all these different areas of your life. The only have to be careful, and this is something that is a important disclaimer, is that not all martial arts instructors are qualified. So if you are thinking about practicing any martial art, you really do have to do your research and make sure that you find somebody that is qualified, somebody that can provide a safe training environment for you or your loved ones, and to a deeper level, hopefully find a martial art that is effective. And there are a lot of martial arts that, in my opinion, will not be effective in a real life situation. It doesn't mean that they don't provide you with the emotional, physical, and psychological well-being, which many do. Tai Chi is a martial arts that I practiced before, but it's a very slow movement martial art that you basically learn how to control your breathing and your balance. But on a hand-to-hand combat, it's not expected that that type of martial art will be effective. So lots of things to consider if you're thinking in practicing martial arts. In very interesting, I did quite a bit of research on African martial arts. Believe it or not, there are quite a number of very, very interesting and effective martial arts that come from the continent. one probably has the most, international recognition. And the Brazilian capoeira was basically a spin-off of a type of martial arts from Angola, the capoeira from Angola that this were brought to Brazil during the 15th century, were now developed into the capoeira martial art that is now famous all over the world. So I'll stop here to open up for Q&A and make sure that people have a chance to ask some questions, and happy to answer anything that any of the members might be curious to know about.
Thank you very much, Julio. At least I've learned something about you that I didn't know. I can confidently say that when you're not working out, you're a mess. So I can confirm that fact. So we'll open the floor to questions and answers. So if you have any question, please just raise your hand and we'll have the host unmute you. You could type in the chat box if you feel shy. Okay, we'll start with past President Willis.
Mr. President, very good knowledge. Thank you for the information about Jiu-Jitsu. Just a question. What is the maximum recommended age for joining martial art, especially for recreation and self-defense?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think a lot of people are worried sometimes about their fitness levels, their the age. I've taught classes to 74-year-olds. I've taught classes to 4-year-olds. A martial arts studio with a good instructor, there's no maximum age. You can start. As old as you are, there's no reason for you that you shouldn't be able to enjoy and get the benefits of martial arts training. Obviously, depending on the age bracket, you're not able to do some, heavy sparring and the more traumatic sort of, activities of training. But you'll definitely be able to benefits from some drilling, from some techniques and so forth. So there's no minimum, I would say 4 years is the youngest that I taught classes, because younger than that they become like, it's like herding cats. Their children go everywhere. They don't have, their attention span is very low, but there's no maximum.
We have a question from one of our guests, Lydia Ndira. She's asking, where can one get trained here in Nairobi?
Yeah, there are a few martial arts schools in Nairobi. It's a place that is becoming more of a hub. There are 3 different Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools in Nairobi. There's one, all of them unfortunately are closed now due to COVID, but one is at the American Embassy and it's open to the public for training. There is an American brown called Sebastian who's highly qualified and he teaches there. There is a gym where I used to teach and have a purple belt training there now, Momentum Fitness. And there is one more in it's a purple belt, a Kenyan student of mine who also teaches there 5 times a week. Ramada Gardens is the place. So there are options for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There are a few judo clubs in Nairobi as well. The national judo team that I trained with before. There are a few Muay Thai gyms as well in Nairobi for people who are interested in striking-based martial arts. And I believe there are a few karate schools as well, but I can vouch for them. I've never taken any karate classes. But I know there are a few instructors in Nairobi that are teaching karate as well.
Okay, so we have President Innocent from Rotratio Enafia. You have a question?
Thank you. So, thank you, Julio, for that interesting bit about Jiu-Jitsu. I'm interested in teaching, not necessarily theoretical, and I feel like martial arts also involves some level of teaching that's really different from the class type. So, I've really been interested in knowing how one can learn from different types of martial arts and the teaching technique. So I really wanted to know the areas where one can really get trained. You've mentioned some. I don't know if there are other types of martial arts that are being trained in Nairobi besides the
Yeah,
ones that you've mentioned.
let me think. I know there was a wrestling coach for the national team, and he was teaching at the stadium. I think he was from Eastern Europe somewhere. So I know there was a wrestling, like American wrestling, if you will, not the fake type, not WWE, but wrestling as a sport, Olympic wrestling. That I know, was available in Nairobi for a while. Boxing is very popular in Kenya. There are actually a few well respected boxing, both amateur and a few professional boxing fighters in Kenya. They teach and have gyms all over the country, prisons. They have also a few other like private gyms that are providing boxing training. Krav Maga is all. There's two or three that I've heard of Krav Maga, which is the Israeli self-defense system. What else? Those are the ones that come to mind at the moment. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Follow up a little bit. Can one get a Wing Chun dummy around? I've never really seen
Wing
one.
Chun, no, I've martial arts equipment in Kenya is hard to come by. Decathlon has a few items, like mitts and kicking, and punching bags, and MMA gloves. I haven't seen a Wing Chun dummy, and anything on the equipment side, the best bet is to order from one of those services that delivers from abroad. It's I forgot Taekwondo. There is also a pretty strong community in Kenya that I know have been around for a while. So that's another one that I forgot to mention.
Okay, thank you very much.
Our SAA, Kevin.
Thank you, Julio, for that presentation. Very exciting. I wanted to find out, because I know a lot of the martial arts around the world have some sort of spiritual foundation to them, which probably lends themselves to that whole, you're saying, that holistic wellness of mental and spiritual as well as physical. So does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu have any sort of, is it founded or any foundation of spiritual kind of alignment, or is it purely that mixture of the jiu-jitsu that was brought by the old man that you were speaking about when he came to Brazil?
Yeah, so it's interesting because the martial arts that go more to the sports side, for some reason they're the ones who become less spiritual, if you will. I don't know if the word spiritual would be the best description, but the Chinese monks are the best kung fu martial artists in that system in the world, and they spend a lot of time meditating and taking care of this of the soul, of the spirit, if you will. But there is this overlap between martial arts and in spirituality, that in a lot of the martial arts there's less of or more of. In the case of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I would say is one of the martial arts on the less of, right? So for you to become a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu professor, a black belt, with the federation, with the professor stripe. You don't have to have any sort of spiritual training. You have to be able to, gone through the all belts. In case in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a white belt for adults, white belt, blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, black belt, and then you have your stripes on your black belt. And then after 25 years as a black belt, you can change to your red and black belt. So there are very few of those in the world. But to get to a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you don't need to have any spiritual training. But the spiritual aspect of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is limited to the philosophy of the martial arts, which is one of respect, which is one of discipline, which is one of only use the martial arts for self-defense. That's as far as the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu sort of philosophy goes. Others like Tai Chi are much heavier on the spiritual side, tying up a little bit with the religious movement, if you will, and Kung Fu. The more Eastern the martial arts is, the more sort of spiritual elements you find in them. The more sports direction they go, the less. So Olympic wrestling, for instance, Taekwondo, they're sports, right? They're technically or practically sports, and that spiritual part is a bit neglected or forgotten, if you will.
Yes, Kevin, please.
So yes, thank you. I have a second question. When you mentioned about the stripes on the belt, so for example, I know like in karate, the black belts, they have those, first dan, second dan, third dan. So what are the levels, for example, for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt?
Yeah, we do have a very similar system, and karate, for instance, is the precursor of judo in a way. Judo and karate the same sort of base, and then Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, traditional Jiu-Jitsu and karate shared a common sort of ancestor. Traditional judo and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, traditional Jiu-Jitsu share the same ancestor, and then Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and judo. So it's almost like a tree that comes, and karate is, I think, is if not one of the oldest modern martial arts, the oldest. And so we inherited a lot of the karate sort of ways. One is wearing the traditional gi, which is that, is the kimono with a belt. That belt in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu system, from the white belt to the brown belt, you have 4 stripes on each belt. So you get a white belt, you put 1 stripe, 2 stripes, which is the equivalent of the dans. And then after the 4th one, you get promoted to blue belt. And then 4 stripes, you get promoted to purple belt. After 4 stripes, you get promoted to brown belt. And then after 4 stripes, you get promoted to black belt. Once you become a black belt, you can only give somebody a black belt if you are a professor, which is your 3rd stripe. So once you get your black belt, the black belt comes with 2 stripes already. And then after every 3 years of training, your instructor gives you 1 additional stripe. So after the 1st stripe on your black belt, or the 3rd stripe on your black belt, you become a professor, and then you can go up to 8 stripes every 3 years. And after those, then you can change again. It is a kind of a code we call stripes, not the dans like you do in karate, but it's a recognition of your time and effort that you put in. You get a stripe on your belt. So it's a similar system.
Is there any other question? Okay. Let me just check the messages, see if there's anyone who's okay. I'll ask President Willis. He's asked another question. So just let me find out if you were able to address to answer his question. I'll pass President Willis. Willis, is it?
Yes, Mr. President. Just a follow-up question to my earlier question on the age. So does, with the vast age, do we get an exemption on the belts, or do we start from the lowest belt possible despite the age?
No, unfortunately, you have to start from the white belt like everybody else. No breaks for the more age advanced, unfortunately.
So that means if I start off, I'm probably below your son.
Yeah, no, both of the boys are already 7 years of training, 8. So one is an orange belt, the other one is a yellow belt. So you definitely will start below them for sure.
Okay. Okay. So, is there any other question? Anyone with a question? Okay, that's fine. So we shall move to the next segment. So Julia, just stay with us for some time. We shall move to the next segment. This is, I'll hand over to SAA.